The power flickered, a prelude to the inevitable plunge into darkness. I gritted my teeth, the unwelcome silence swallowing the room whole. Moonlight, a sickly silver through the dusty windowpane, cast long shadows that danced across the worn floorboards. Tonight, like every full moon, the memory of my mother was a suffocating presence. She, too, had vanished on a night like this, her violin case abandoned, its contents scattered like fallen stars. Her final composition, a melody both haunting and beautiful, lay forgotten on the music stand. It was a piece I couldn't play, not without succumbing to the crushing weight of grief. But tonight, a strange compulsion settled over me. The silence clawed at my sanity, demanding a response. With trembling fingers, I picked up her violin, the wood cool and familiar beneath my touch. The bow creaked in its case as I drew it out, the moonlight glinting off its worn silver tip. Taking a deep breath, I began. The first notes were hesitant, tentative, like a lost bird searching for its song. But as I progressed, the melody unfolded, its sorrow a counterpoint to the moonlit night. It was then, amidst the crescendo of emotion, that the lights flickered back on, bathing the room in a harsh glare. And there, standing in the doorway, was a man. He was tall, with an air of quiet elegance that seemed at odds with the shadows clinging to him like a shroud. His eyes, the color of twilight, held me captive, their depths swirling with 1,000 unspoken secrets. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. A predator, every instinct screamed. But there was something about him, a flicker of vulnerability in that gaze, that held me rooted to the spot. That was remarkable. He finally spoke, his voice a smooth caress against the sudden silence. You play with a passion that echoes through the ages. His words startled me from my stupor. Who are you? I demanded, my voice thin and raspy. He smiled, a hint of amusement dancing in his eyes. Someone who appreciates good music, he said, taking a step closer. And someone who knew your mother. Those words ignited a spark within me. You knew her? The question tumbled out, laced with desperation. Do you know what happened to her? He paused for a moment, his eyes seeming to pierce into my very soul. That, Miss Fiore, he said, a slow, dangerous smile curving his lips, is a story best told over a glass of something strong. A shiver ran down my spine, equal parts fear and a strange, unsettling anticipation. This man, with his haunted eyes and unsettling presence, held the key to my past. But venturing into the shadows with him could spell danger. Yet, the chance to unravel the mystery of my mother's disappearance, to finally find peace, was a siren song I couldn't ignore. So, with a deep breath and a tremor in my hand, I found myself saying, Very well. But make it something very strong. I have a feeling this night will be long. Adrian Blackwood, for that was his name, led me to a dimly lit cafe hidden in the labyrinthine streets of the city. The scent of strong coffee and candle wax mingled with the faint metallic undertone of something ancient and otherworldly. The patrons cast furtive glances our way, whispering in hushed tones that stopped abruptly as we approached. They knew him, I realized, and fear was etched into their expressions. He ordered 2 cups of black coffee, his eyes never leaving mine. As the liquid steamed between us, he began to weave a tale of his past, entwined with my mother's. They had been close, once, back when he was still human, before the curse of immortality had stolen him from her. The sonata I'd played was one she'd composed for him, a lullaby that had once soothed his human heart. My curiosity grew as the night deepened, each revelation a thread in the tapestry of their shared history. His voice was a velvet purr, painting vivid images of a world I never knew existed. But with every word the tension grew, thick and palpable, stretching the fabric of our newfound alliance. The society, he said, his gaze intense, sought her out for her gift. The music she created, it was more than just notes on a page. It was power. Power they wanted to harness. The gravity of his words sent a chill down my spine. My mother's disappearance was no random act. It was a deliberate theft, a snuffing out of a flame they hadn't understood. What do you mean, power? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Adrian leaned closer, his breath a soft sigh against my cheek. Music, Miss Fiore, is not just for the ears. It's for the soul. And in the right hands it can be a weapon. His confession brought us to the precipice of a dark and dangerous world. I knew that with every step we took together, I was venturing further from the safety of the known. Yet, the lure of the truth, of understanding the fate of the woman who had once been my world, was irresistible. As we left the cafe, the moon had reached its zenith, casting a cold light upon the cobblestone streets. Adrian's hand was warm around my elbow, a gentle guide through the shadows. I knew I was playing with fire, but the flames of discovery burned too brightly to ignore. We must be careful, he warned, his eyes scanning the darkness. The society will not let us interfere without a fight. I nodded, my resolve firm. Whatever it takes, I said, my grip on the sonata's manuscript tightening. I need to know what happened to her. With that, we stepped into the night, the first note of our perilous symphony hanging in the air, a promise of the secrets and dangers that awaited us in the heart of the city's secret underworld. The streets grew quieter as we ventured into the shadowy districts where whispers of the supernatural were as common as the chime of a distant clock tower. The buildings leaned in, as if eager to hear the whispers of our forbidden quest. Adrian's grip on my elbow grew firmer as we approached a nondescript townhouse, its windows glowing with a flickering light that suggested candles rather than electricity. The door opened before we could knock, revealing an unassuming man with spectacles perched on his nose. His eyes widened in recognition of Adrian, and a knowing smile played upon his lips as he ushered us inside. The interior was a stark contrast to the dusty austerity of my apartment. The walls were lined with books that seemed to breathe with the weight of ancient knowledge, and the air was thick with the scent of incense and leather. This was the lair of Dr. Alistair Crowley, the eccentric professor whose name had been whispered in the hallowed halls of academia and the clandestine circles of the occult. He offered us a seat before a roaring fireplace, the flames casting a warm glow over the room that seemed to belie the chill in the air outside. His eyes, bright and inquisitive, never left my face as Adrian spoke of our intentions. The silence grew heavier with each unspoken word, the crackle of the fire the only sound as the doctor considered our tale. "Ah, the Blood Moon Sonata," he murmured, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "A piece of such potency, lost to the ages. Your mother was indeed a remarkable woman." His gaze flicked to Adrian. "And you, a vampire with a penchant for the arts. How unusual." The tension grew as he spoke, each syllable a tightened string on a bow. It was clear he knew more than he was willing to reveal, his words a dance around the truth we sought. His eyes gleamed with an unsettling excitement, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching us with the same curiosity one might reserve for a particularly intriguing experiment. "We need your help," I said, my voice firm despite the quaking in my chest. "We believe the society has something to do with her disappearance." Dr. Crowley's smile grew wider, showing just a hint of fawn. "And what makes you think I would be willing to assist you, Miss Fiore?" Adrian's hand tightened around my arm, a silent warning, but I met the doctor's gaze without flinching. "Because," I said, "you know that the truth is the most powerful weapon of all. And I suspect you crave it as much as we do." For a moment, the room held its breath. Then, with a flourish of his hand, Dr. Crowley produced a dusty tome, its pages yellowed with age. "Very well," he said, his eyes gleaming. "Let us see what secrets we can unearth together." The pages whispered as he turned them, revealing a world of vampiric lore and the shadowy society that ruled it. The sonata, it seemed, was more than just a piece of music. It was a map to a power that could either save or destroy us all. As he spoke, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, each one more alarming than the last. I felt a strange kinship with Adrian, our shared quest for answers drawing us closer. His eyes, usually so guarded, searched mine, and in their depths, I saw a flicker of hope. Perhaps together, we could find the truth and bring an end to the symphony of pain that had haunted us both for so long. But as the night grew darker, and the whispers of the streets grew more sinister, I couldn't help but wonder if our alliance would survive the coming storm. The society would not give up their secrets without a fight, and with every step we took, we were dancing closer to the jaws of the beast. The room grew still as Dr. Crowley found the page he sought. It contained an image of a crimson moon, its edges frayed and smeared with what looked like dried blood. The sonata's notes swirled around it like a deadly embrace. "This," he said, tapping the page with a manicured finger, "is the key to understanding the Society's obsession with your mother's music. The Blood Moon Sonata holds the essence of a vampire's soul. Played under the right conditions, it can manipulate the very fabric of our existence." My heart skipped a beat. "Manipulate how?" Adrian's expression grew grim. "It can control our emotions, our actions. It can even grant a human power over us." The realization dawned on me, cold and stark. "That's why they took her," I murmured. "They wanted to use her music to control you." Dr. Crowley nodded, his eyes alight with the thrill of discovery. "And now, with her gone, they seek to recreate the sonata, to wield its power for their own ends." The weight of this revelation pressed down on me like a stone. My mother's disappearance was not just a personal tragedy but a catalyst for something far greater, something that could threaten the delicate balance between the human and vampire worlds. "We must find the rest of the sonata," Adrian said, his voice low and determined. "It's the only way to stop them." I nodded, a fierce resolve burning within me. "But first, we need to know who's behind this society. Who are they, and what do they want?" The doctor leaned back in his chair, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "Ah, the puppeteers. They are an ancient lineage, shrouded in secrecy and power. To reveal their identities would be unwise. But I can give you a name. One that may lead you to the heart of their operations." He scribbled a name on a piece of paper and handed it to me. "Lord Elijah Castellanos. He is rumored to be their leader, though I suspect he is but one of many. Take this information with caution, for they will not take kindly to outsiders prying into their affairs." The name felt like a hot coal in my hand, a beacon of hope wrapped in a warning. "Thank you," I said, tucking the paper safely into my pocket. "Remember," Dr. Crowley added, his gaze intense, "the path you walk is fraught with danger. The Society will not surrender their prize easily." As we stepped out into the night, the air had turned colder, the moon casting a crimson glow that painted the cobblestones in a sinister light. The shadows grew darker, and the whispers of the city grew louder, as if the very streets were alive with the secrets we sought. Adrian took my hand, his touch surprisingly warm and reassuring. "We'll face this together," he said, his voice a gentle promise in the cacophony of my racing thoughts. Together, we ventured deeper into the heart of the city's underbelly, the echoes of the sonata's haunting melody guiding us like a siren's call through the twisting alleyways. The night grew darker, the buildings leaning in, whispering their secrets to the wind that played with my hair and sent shivers down my spine. Our search led us to an opulent mansion, its facade a stark contrast to the decay that surrounded it. The wrought iron gates groaned open at our approach, revealing a garden of twisted, moonlit sculptures that seemed to watch us with unblinking eyes. The door to the mansion loomed before us, a mouth to a world I never knew existed. As Adrian raised his hand to knock, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. The fate of my mother, the future of our world, hinged on the truths we were about to uncover. The door swung open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadow. A chill ran through me as the creature stepped into the moonlight, its eyes gleaming with a hunger that was all too familiar. "Welcome," a smooth, cultured voice greeted us. "I've been expecting you." The tension in the air was palpable, the scent of danger thick and heady. I knew in that moment that we had crossed a line from which there was no turning back. Our dance with the unknown had become a deadly waltz, and the music had just begun to play. The figure before us was tall and slender, with an air of aristocratic menace that seemed to suck the very life from the surrounding shadows. His eyes, when they met mine, were as cold and calculating as a serpent's, yet they held a flicker of something else, something that sent a shiver down my spine. "Lord Castellanos," Adrian murmured, his voice tight with tension. The vampire nodded, a predatory smile playing on his lips. "I see you've brought a human to our little soiree," he said, his gaze lingering on me. "How refreshing. Adrian stepped in front of me, his posture protective. "We've come for answers," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Castellanos chuckled, the sound sending a shiver down my spine. "Ah, the ever-elusive truth," he said, gesturing for us to enter. "You shall have your answers, Mr. Blackwood. But first, a performance." The room we stepped into was a decadent feast for the eyes, all velvet and gold, with a stage at the far end where a quartet of vampires played a mournful tune. The music was hauntingly beautiful, but it was the figure at the center that drew my gaze, a woman, bound and gagged, her eyes wild with fear. My mother. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I struggled against the vampire's grip, my heart racing with a mix of horror and relief. "Mother!" I screamed, but the sound was lost in the cacophony of the room. Adrian's eyes met mine, a silent promise of protection and solidarity. We had to get her out, to put an end to this monstrous game. But as we moved toward the stage, the vampires around us closed in, their eyes gleaming with a hunger that went beyond the need for blood. The sonata's power was in play, and we were but pawns in their twisted symphony. "The Blood Moon Sonata," Castellanos announced, his voice carrying over the music. "A piece so potent, it can command the very essence of our being. And tonight, Miss Fiore, you shall play it for us. Or watch as your mother suffers the consequences." My eyes burned with tears and rage as they placed a violin in my trembling hands. The bow felt foreign, a weapon in a battle I never wanted to fight. But I had no choice. As I lifted the instrument to my chin, I felt Adrian's hand on my shoulder, his touch a whisper of comfort in the chaos. And as the first notes spilled from the strings, a strange warmth grew within me, a power that seemed to resonate with every beat of my heart. The music swelled, filling the room with a force that was both terrifying and exhilarating. The vampires grew still, their eyes locked on me, their hunger palpable. And as the melody reached its crescendo, I knew that this was the moment that would define us all. The sonata's power surged through me, a tide of emotion that seemed to pull at the very fabric of reality. And in that instant I understood. The music was a bond, a connection between Adrian and my mother, and now between us. It was love and loss, anger and hope, all wrapped in a melody that could either save or destroy. As the last note hung in the air, the room fell silent. The vampires stared at me, their hunger replaced with a begrudging respect. And in the eyes of Lord Castellanos, I saw a flicker of fear. The balance of power had shifted, and it was time to seize our chance. With the sonata's final note still ringing in my ears, I stepped closer to the stage, the violin's power thrumming through my veins. "Release her," I demanded, my voice steady despite the fear that gripped my heart. Castellanos' smile grew colder, his eyes narrowing. "Or what, little human?" Adrian stepped up beside me, his gaze never leaving the bound figure of my mother. "Or we bring this house down around you," he said, his voice a low growl. The vampires surrounding the stage tensed, their fangs bared in a silent challenge. I knew we were outmatched, but the desperation that fueled us was a potent force. The bond between Adrian and my mother's music was stronger than any chain that bound her. With a flick of his wrist, Adrian sent a nearby chair hurtling towards the quartet. The vampires scattered, their instruments crashing to the floor as the chair shattered into splinters. The chaos was our opening, and we took it. I sprinted towards my mother, the adrenaline coursing through me like a wildfire. My hands trembled as I worked at the knots, my eyes never leaving hers. She was frail, her eyes sunken and her skin pale, but the spark of life remained, burning brightly. As the last knot gave way, she collapsed into my arms, sobbing with relief. "Mama," I whispered, holding her tightly. But our victory was short-lived. Castellanos' eyes flashed with fury as he leapt from the shadows, his movements liquid and terrifyingly fast. "You dare to defy me?" he roared, his fangs bared. Adrian stepped between us, his body a shield. "You've had your fun," he said, his voice deceptively calm. "Now let her go." The vampire lord's smile was a chilling sight. "I think not," he hissed, his eyes gleaming with malice. You see, Miss Fiore, your mother's music is but a small part of the equation. The true power lies in your bloodline. And now that I have you both. He lunged, but Adrian was quicker, his own fangs bared in a snarl of rage. The two collided, a blur of motion and snarling, a dance of predator and prey played out in the flickering candlelight. The room erupted into pandemonium as the other vampires joined the fray. My mother clung to me, her eyes wide with terror. I had to get her out, to save her from the horror that had stolen her away from me. With a strength born of desperation, I dragged her arm around my shoulder and made for the door, dodging through the fighting vampires. The night air was a cold slap in the face as we stumbled out of the mansion, the sounds of battle fading behind us. I didn't dare look back, didn't dare think of Adrian. Our eyes had met in that last moment, a silent goodbye that spoke of love and sacrifice. But as we stumbled through the streets, the echoes of the sonata lingered in my mind, a promise of a bond that transcended the boundaries of life and death. And I knew, deep in my heart, that this was not the end of our story. The journey ahead was fraught with danger, but I had the sonata, the power of our love, and the burning need for vengeance to guide me. Together, we would bring an end to the society's tyranny, and perhaps, in doing so, find redemption for Adrian's tortured soul. For now, though, we had to run, to hide, to survive. The city was our stage, and the moon above us, a crimson sentinel, watched over our escape, a silent witness to the love that had been reborn amidst the shadows. The streets were eerily empty, as if the city itself held its breath in anticipation of what was to come. My mother leaned heavily on me, her legs wobbly from captivity, but her spirit remained unbroken. She whispered words of encouragement as we wove through the labyrinth of alleyways, the echoes of our footsteps our only companions. "Sarah," she gasped, her voice hoarse but filled with urgency. "You must understand. The sonata is not just a weapon. It's a bridge, a connection between worlds. Use it wisely." Her words were a cryptic riddle, but one I knew I had to solve. The power of the music was immense, and in the wrong hands, it could bring about unspeakable horrors. We found refuge in a deserted church, its stone walls thick and unyielding, a bastion against the night's malicious whispers. My mother's eyes searched the shadows, the fear never truly leaving them, as she spoke of the society's ultimate goal, to harness the sonata's power to control the very essence of existence. "They believe that with the Blood Moon Sonata, they can become gods," she murmured, her voice haunted. "But it's a power that no one should wield." The gravity of her words settled over me like a shroud. The society had to be stopped, but how could we hope to stand against them? I was just a human, armed with nothing but a violin and a fierce determination. But as I cradled her in my arms, the warmth of her body a stark contrast to the cold marble beneath us, I knew that together, we could do the impossible. The sonata was our weapon, our light in the dark, and Adrian, my vampire protector, was the key to unlocking its true potential. We waited for dawn, the stained glass windows casting a mottled pattern of color across our faces. As the first light of day peeked through the cracks, the tension in the air dissipated, and the vampire's hold on the city loosened. My mother's strength began to return, and she took the violin from me, her trembling fingers tracing the strings. "We must finish it," she said, her eyes alight with a fierce determination. "The sonata is the key to our salvation." The notes she played were haunting, a melody that seemed to resonate with the very soul of the church. As the sun climbed higher, the shadows retreated, and with them, the fear that had held us captive. We had a plan, a fragile thread of hope that we clung to with every ounce of our being. We would find Adrian, complete the sonata, and together, we would bring an end to the society's reign of terror. The city was changing, the daylight revealing the cracks in its facade. The secrets it held tight were starting to slip away, and I could feel the tide of fate turning in our favor. But as we ventured forth into the light of day, the name of our enemy echoed in my mind, Lord Castellanos. The vampire who had taken my mother, who had sought to use us both as pawns in his twisted game. He was out there, waiting, watching, and I knew that our battle was far from over. Our alliance was unconventional, a human and a vampire bound by a love that transcended time and bloodlust. But together, we would face the monsters lurking in the shadows, our music the sword that would cut through the lies and darkness. The sun bathed the cobblestone streets in a warm embrace, a stark contrast to the chilling melody that had propelled us into this perilous world. The sonata was our beacon, our guide through the labyrinth of secrets and betrayals. And as we stepped into the light, I knew that the Blood Moon had not seen the last of Serafina Fiore and Adrian Blackwood. Our symphony of love and loss was just beginning. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider subscribing to stay updated with our latest stories, give us a like if you want to see more, and drop a comment below to let us know your thoughts.